Everyone is screaming that the bull market is over, but what if that's exactly what they want you to believe? Because under the surface, something massive is happening. And in this video, I'm going to show you all of the signals that could make smart investors very wealthy over the next few months. And one specific chart proves it all. So make sure you watch through the whole video because we're going to break it down at the end. Now, let's dive in, guys. Is this bull market cancelled? Or is this still a big $400,000 opportunity? So everyone right now is panicking. Bitcoin dipped from its previous all-time high of around $108,000, and now we're hovering somewhere around, what is it, 80,000, 83,000, 84,000, sometimes, a little bit higher than that. But if you ask around, the average person, the average Joe, maybe your mom, your dad, your aunt, your neighbor, the newspaper headlines, they're all very negative about Bitcoin and crypto right now. My DM is filled with people that, constantly reply to all of my Instagram stories telling me, man, just give up. You're dreaming. Bitcoin is never going to go up from here. All of the charts that you're looking at are broken. But I believe that by studying the past, you can understand what the future may hold. And it is exactly understanding what the big guys in the market are doing that will help you to understand what might come next, because all of this is a massive setup. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So we just finished the first quarter of 2025. And yes, it wasn't what we hoped for. Historically, Q1 is a very bullish time for crypto. But we actually had one of the worst first quarters of Bitcoin returns in the past 7 years, as shown here in this tweet by Quinton. So we ended the first quarter with a minus 11% overall return, which is terrible, especially if you compare it to 2024, where we had almost 70% returns, 2023, where we also had 71%, 2021, almost 100%, 2019, 8%, 2017, 11%. But for sure, this Q1 was terrible. I mean, the bears right now are cheering because this is the moment that they can tell to everyone, like, hey guys, I told you so, the market is going to dip, Bitcoin is not going to go higher. And all of their expectations and assumptions are now confirmed because the market dipped. And on top of that, Donald Trump is coming out with tariffs, he's spooking out the market, the stock market is tanking, the political uncertainty or economic uncertainty right now is at record highs. So yeah, there's a lot of fear in the market. But if you really study the data, then you understand that the party hasn't even started yet. So here on this chart, you see a trend line that shows that the Bitcoin price is oscillating above and below this trend line. And when it oscillates above this trend line, it turns green, or the surface area under the chart turns green, meaning that we are in bull territory, in extreme or greed to extreme greed territory. And right now we're not there yet. We're still trending below this trend line. So look, guys, past performance is never a guarantee for future success or future results. But oftentimes history rhymes. So by studying these patterns over, past data and extrapolating that into the future, we can, with a certain probability, estimate what might happen next in the future. And this chart is just one of the many bits and pieces of data that we have available that shows us that there's still a lot more room to grow. One other indicator, for example, is the retail interest for Bitcoin. So if you go on Google Trends, and that's just a free tool by Google, you can type it in on the search bar, Google Trends, and you can then type in the search term Bitcoin, and then you can see how trending this keyword is over time. So in 2020, Bitcoin interest, or a record number of people typed in Bitcoin on Google to learn more about Bitcoin, to find out where they could buy Bitcoin. So this is a really great proxy to see where the retail market is at in the crypto market. And right now we are very far from these all-time high levels. And that shows me and a lot of other, seasoned investors in the market that we haven't really seen any greed in this market cycle yet. So that's another sign that there is a lot more room for growth. Here is a tweet by this Michael Saylor parody account. So again, not officially Michael Saylor's account, but it's a fun account to follow on X. He's sharing a lot of interesting insights. He's saying after the breakout of above $100,000 and the subsequent pullback, long-term holders are gradually stepping back in. The blue line is ticking upwards again. So what we're seeing here in this chart is the following. So the black line, that's the price of Bitcoin. And over time, Bitcoin moves up and down in these cycles. And the blue line, those are the long-term holders and how much Bitcoin they are accumulating. And what we saw was that when Bitcoin was pumping towards $108,000 per Bitcoin, long-term holders were actually selling some of their holdings. But what we're seeing right now is that this dump by long-term holders has now bottomed out. And we're seeing that long-term holders are now actually increasing their Bitcoin positions again. And I think that's a very interesting uh, data set to look at. Why? Because long-term holders are generally the ones that are most experienced, most educated. They know the cycles the best, and they've been in it for a long time. Whereas the new investors, the retail investors that have only joined the market in the past 4 or 5 years, or maybe this is their first cycle, they're panicking right now because they want to go into Bitcoin and they want to become a multimillionaire next day. Okay, that's generally not how wealth is being built. And that's basically the lottery ticket mentality that most people have. But again, how big is the probability of you winning the lottery? Very small. So if you're in it to get rich quick, then you're going to get your ass handed to you. But if you understand the market, you study it, you invest during these times of, these dips, these corrections, and you're willing to hold and have a long-term perspective, then there is a lot of wealth to be made. And these long-term investors understand that Bitcoin right now is dirt cheap. There's a record fear in the market. The crypto market is extremely fearful. The stock market is extremely fearful. The total economic uncertainty is at record highs. So generally, that's the best time to accumulate. You know this famous saying of Warren Buffett, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. It's this contrarian way of thinking that enables you to generate the biggest amount of wealth over time. So before we dive in and before I show you more proof of why this bull market isn't yet over and why there is still a lot more room for Bitcoin's price to grow, if you enjoy watching videos like this one where I break down everything that's happening in the market, then do me one quick favor, smash the like button. It gives me good feedback to know that you enjoy watching videos like this one and that I should make more like these. And if you haven't done so yet, also make sure to subscribe to my channel because I'm going to be posting regular videos just like this one to help you to make sense of everything that's going on and to make sure that you maximize your profits as a crypto investor and that you don't just get shaken out by market corrections or by news articles or retail investors around you that are sharing their negativity. This is the time to educate yourself, to stay informed about what's happening in the market, and that will ultimately help you to maximize your profit. So let's continue. Here's why the bull market isn't yet over. So here we see a heat map, and in this heat map we see the accumulation score by large wallet holders. So here what we see is we see different on the vertical axis we see different segments or different cohorts of Bitcoin holders, people that are holding less than 1 Bitcoin, 1 to 10 Bitcoin, and then it's going all the way up to people holding between 1,000 and 10,000 Bitcoin and 10,000 plus. So we are seeing right now that the number of Bitcoin whales, which have more than 10,000 Bitcoin, they're accumulating again, which is really interesting because when we analyze the market in general, we look at buying and selling pressure. Generally, the market goes up when there's more buying pressure than selling pressure, and the market goes down when there's more selling pressure than buying pressure. But there's different buyers and there's different sellers. And these are often, categorized by the size of their assets that they're having already. So these whales, they're oftentimes the institutions, the big investors that are managing hundreds of millions and even billions. They have the largest teams of analysts, and they're generally the smart money in the market. And oftentimes the easiest way to spot profitable trends in the market is to do or to copy what the smart money is doing. You don't have access to the same data sets as they do, to the same analysts as they do, to the same advisors as they do, but you can simply copy what they're doing. That's one of the easy ways to piggyback off all of their hard work and experience. Then another indicator is showing that the OTC desks, which are over-the-counter desks, so whenever big whales or big institutions are buying Bitcoin, they don't buy Bitcoin on the open market, because imagine if you pump a few $billion into the market, then you increase the price of Bitcoin. So those whales, they don't want to pump their own price while they're accumulating, because that would only drive their acquisition price up. Instead, what they're doing is they go to a big exchange or a big Bitcoin miner, and they do an over-the-counter deal, meaning that this over-the-counter desk issues them an invoice for a certain amount of Bitcoin. Then they pay that invoice, and then Bitcoin gets transferred directly to their wallet without having to go through a exchange. Exactly, and that's how they buy Bitcoin behind the scenes without impacting the price. Now, here's another big important chart that you shouldn't disregard, which is the following: the global M2, which is the global money supply, aka global liquidity, all of the money that's in circulation. Now, Bitcoin is almost a perfect proxy for the global liquidity. We see every time global liquidity is increased, the price of Bitcoin tends to follow. And probably the best example was in 2020, when we saw the COVID dip happen, and central banks around the world started to print more money. We saw instantly that the price of Bitcoin started to increase. Now, Donald Trump right now is crashing the market on purpose. Some say it's like a controlled demolition of the stock market, of the crypto market, all of the markets in general. And he is basically forcing the Fed to lower the interest rate, meaning that money becomes more freely available. And when there's more money in the system, when there's more liquidity, that generally tends to drive up the price of Bitcoin too. And that's exactly what we expect to happen next in the market too. Here's another chart which shows the Bitcoin Combined Market Index, the BCMI, which is this purple line. And whenever this purple line hits the green zone, it's generally close to a market bottom. Whenever this purple line crosses into the orange box, it's generally a market top. Now, we're somewhere below the average. So that means that we still have a lot more room to grow. So another indicator showing us that there's still more room to grow in the market. And that's why it's important to decouple yourself from all of the news, all of the negativity, all of your friends, your family members. At this point, you should really look at all of the data in the market, and you should decouple your emotions, base your decisions on data, have patience, and be willing to take advantage of these extremely great buying opportunities and these generational wealth opportunities. So another indicator is that on average, Bitcoin peaks 480 days after the Bitcoin halving. Right now, we are 340 days after the Bitcoin halving. So this shows that there's still, let's say, 150 to 200 days left in order for us to move up. At least if Bitcoin tends to follow this, the previous cyclical patterns again. This week, one of my friends, he messaged me, he's saying, Mitchell, a lot of people around me are telling that the 4-year cycle is broken, that we're going to enter a super cycle, and that we're not going to see these 4-year movements again. And I don't like to make those kind of assumptions, because I like to believe that a certain trend will continue until there is sufficient evidence that a trend is broken. And so far, there is not sufficient evidence that we're not going to follow this 4-year cycle again, and that there won't be another 4-year cycle. That's just pure speculation. To me, there's a much bigger probability that we're just going to continue this 4-year cycle again. Maybe in the future it will be broken, but only when I see sufficiently evidence to conclude that the 4-year cycle is broken, then I will continue on a new trajectory. But so far, if I look at these past data, we still see that Bitcoin is on track to have a similar Bitcoin bull market, just like the previous ones. Which brings me to the following point. You're being played by the big institutions, all right? The whales, the BlackRocks, the hedge funds, they're playing with your emotions. Quinton here is making a very interesting remark. He's saying the market will bore you until you're so tired that you just want to leave. And then, boom, the institutions will pump the market. And then you have FOMO and you want to buy back into the market again at a higher price. So, to conclude, at this point, you need to have patience. Decouple yourself from what's happening in the news and understand, look at the data and understand the long-term trajectory that we are on. So when in doubt, zoom out. And that's exactly all of the bits and pieces of data and the charts that I'm showing you here in this video. The Bitcoin dominance is increasing to a 4-year high, meaning that many more investors right now are consolidating their positions into Bitcoin, moving money out of altcoins, moving back into Bitcoin because they believe it's a much more safer bet. On the other hand, the Bitcoin dominance chart is also one thing that investors look at to understand if there's still going to be an alt season. So when this Bitcoin dominance starts to drop, then there's a bigger likelihood that we're going to see a big alt season, which is what many investors in the crypto space are, hoping for right now. Because if your portfolio is heavily allocated to altcoins, then you're not having a fun time right now because altcoins are being totally decimated. And Bitcoin is still holding up relatively quite good compared to stocks, compared to altcoins, compared to other investment classes. So Bitcoin is doing really well right now. And actually, we saw that the market dumped a lot after Trump came out with his Liberation Day and all of the tariffs that he was going to place on different countries around the world. But where the whole stock market tanked, even the Magnificent Seven, like the top, tech companies, Meta, Amazon, Apple, Nvidia, you name it, they crashed super hard, whereas Bitcoin held quite steadily, which is a really great sign. It shows that the short-term holders, their selling pressure has been depleted. Everyone that was fearful already sold their Bitcoin, and now the real believers are holding on to Bitcoin. Alex Becker is saying, I'm fucking bullish, even if we dip to the 70s. These prices are fucking gifts in the mid to long term. Exactly. So this kind of embodies what Warren Buffett is saying too. Be fearful when everyone is greedy and be greedy when everyone is fearful. These are generational buying opportunities. These are moments to accumulate with a very massive discount. It's almost like Black Friday came early and that there's a massive fire sale going on right now. So yeah, either you sit along the sidelines and watch the whole world crumble, or you take advantage of the fear. And you need to keep in mind, all storms will eventually pass. Fear is just temporary, and these buying opportunities rarely ever present themselves. And Quinton is saying, we're so spoiled in crypto, we don't even have a few years of patience for our bags to moon. Try to explain this mindset to a stock investor. Yeah, because stock investors, historically, the stock market has generated 7 to 10% of annualized returns over the long term. Of course, stocks, the S&P 500 can increase with 20% or it can dip with 30%, but on average, the stock market generates 7 to 10% of annualized returns. Now, we in the crypto market, we're looking for 10x's, 20x's, 100x's, and we all want to do it tomorrow or today, even better. So right now, the market is being manipulated by the institutions to play into the short-term greed of these investors, of these retail investors that just want to get rich quick and that are now selling their Bitcoin with a discount. So the institutions know exactly how to play with their emotions so that they can buy up as much cheap Bitcoin as possible before we start with this next leg up. So the market is designed, and keep this in mind, the market is designed to extract the most amount of money from the most amount of people. 95% of people aren't making money in the financial markets. 5% is making all of the money. So the real question is, are you going to become part of the 5% that's actually going to make the money, or are you going to become part of the 95% that's losing all the money? And that's why I say it's really important to study the data and to study what the smart money is doing in the markets right now, so that you have an understanding of what will probably happen next in the market. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe that we have just entered the bear market, and that it will probably take another 2 years or 1 or 2 years for Bitcoin to bottom, and that we're going to start to see a new bull market start? Or do you believe that this is just a short-term dip in a longer-term bull trend, and that the biggest price gains in the crypto market still have to come? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Now, 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗹 is saying we're still in a bull run. The Bitcoin peak euphoria hasn't hit yet. FOMO is not at the top. And you need to work hard right now and accumulate. So if you have a job, if you have a business, make sure to use your spare money to find ways to allocate it into the financial markets right now, because we've got generational buying opportunities. Literally, you've got people saying for years on end, like, hey, I cannot wait for the market to once crash, because then I'll buy more investments, more assets, more Bitcoin, more crypto. But this is the moment, guys. This is the market crash, the market dip, the correction that you've probably been waiting for. So are you going to sit along the sidelines and watch, or are you going to take advantage? All right, hey, I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure to smash the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, also make sure to subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to be posting regular videos just like this one. I'm going to be beside you in the trenches to help you to make sense of everything that's going on and to identify really great opportunities so that you can maximize your profits. All right, hey, thanks for watching. Peace out, take care, and I will see you in the next one.